Hello there. My name is Muzammil, and I'm quite the Jurassic fan if I do say so myself. But let's not talk about me. Let's talk about you and how you came to this video to see me break down and review Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous. So the reason why I wanted to do this video is because fans such as myself probably don't have as big of a platform, but I think it would be a great idea to just kind of explore what I'm looking forward to in the future of this franchise. So I'm going to kind of go through my notes that I wrote down after binging this season. So let's just see how that goes. All right, so first half of the season, episodes 1 to 4. I think starting off with the logo, I thought it was pretty cool. Just starting off with the classic Universal, and then kind of zooming into the island. So that was really nice, and just getting into the T-Rex, of course. And then in classic Jurassic fashion, they had a prologue featuring the main character in an encounter with a bunch of raptors and a T-Rex. And they don't really hold back on the carnage, but in the safety net of a family oriented animated show, I think they don't really overdo it, which works well in its own right. And then what was really nice was that there was a Jurassic Park 3 reference after Darius, the main character, goes through the game again, and we see the resonating chamber of a velociraptor. So that was really cool, just how he was able to implement that in quick thinking. And then ultimately that leads to the remaining plot where he goes to Jurassic World. So what was really great about this prologue was that it was all a game. So I think it was a really convincing one, if you ask me, because I love a theme park tycoon style game with the high quality dinosaurs, just like any other fan. But to be on foot encountering these fearsome creatures in a first player role playing game, we need a proper one. And once we got to the island, I think we got a really good sense of all the different personalities of the campers, and I think it really helps each of them stand out. It was really good, even with the camp counselors themselves. And then the first thing that I liked that was picked up from the novel was that the compies would scavenge different parts of the island. So that happens to be the first dinosaur encounter that they have, which I think they had a solid suspense built on that. And then once we get to the actual camp, I think we got a really nice view of the herbivores. And although the 2015 film heavily featured the apatosaurs, I did not really catch any as they primarily focused on the brachiosaurs. Um, and then a nice feature was getting an extra view behind Dr. Wu's mad scientist vibes, because we've been seeing that brew in this part of the franchise, which is really nice to see that. So I've noticed in some comments from like one of the recent clips from this show, and I agree that Wu seemed a little deliberate in showing his villainous self compared to the films. But this lab sequence is where we are introduced to the adorable Bumpy, and it's reminiscent of the raptor hatching from the first film, and it's revealed that she is born with an asymmetric pair of horns. So that was a really nice moment. And then another crucial point was that we built up the mysterious side plot that begins, and we find out that someone is sending information outside of the camp and presumably outside of the island, which we soon find out that it is from Sammy. Now, on to the Dino Peril. The first half, I feel it is quite lighter compared to the second half. For instance, we had the Raptor Squad, which were introduced, and it was a very similar fashion to how it was used in the 2015 film when one of the workers gets uh, trapped into the enclosure, and they escape pretty much similarly. And then we had Toro, the Carnotaurus, that was, in my opinion, a more satisfying sequence. And then finally, the last sequence, which I will call the Ceratopsy Turvy, with the Sinoceratops and the Gyrosphere, which was a solid and unlikely way for the teens to bond with each other. Now, kind of moving on to the next or the second half of the season, the kids are separated from the counselors, and at least this time, they're not exactly looking for trouble like some of the other kids in the film franchise. So trouble finds them as the Indominus Rex wreaks havoc on the Camp Cretaceous site. and they cleverly escape, and we cut to a really emotional flashback from Darius on what happened to his father, and it kind of made me think of the Disney movie Onward, if you ask me. So that was really nice to kind of see his motivations about going to the island. And back to the reality, just before the Indominus wrecking the camp, Brooklyn, the vlogger, she discovered in one of her videos about Sammy. So there's quite a bit of arguments going back and forth between everybody. Um, but later on, there's a bit of plot about the worry over the cell phone. So Sammy very clearly had stolen it. And then along the way, the main goal of the kids is to get to the main park, which ends up backfiring with the Indominus chasing them. But they end up bumping into a juvenile Bumpy who maintains a strong bond with the timid and awkward Ben. So eventually, the kids find their way to the research lab from episode 2 and find out from the abandoned scientist that Wu has a more sinister plan, which solidifies the ending of Jurassic World and much of Fallen Kingdom. And to kind of sidetrack a bit, we then find out about the truth behind Sammy being a spy for another company called Manticore. So that means that Biosyn is not the only big contender out there against InGen and Masrani, which I thought was really interesting about the subplot is that it kind of tied into my own fan fiction called Jurassic Impact and a bit of the Telltale game where we had Nima who was working to get the dinosaur embryos from Nedry. Um, so now back to the plot. We finally get to see where the movie and the show cross over, and it's the breach in the aviary, which is really nice how they tie that in. And then with the pterosaurs loose, this cuts to another great nod to the Jurassic Park River Adventure that is still currently there at some of the Universal theme parks. And I memorized most of the dialogue of that ride, so I was kind of waiting for that to happen. But they did incorporate a waterfall in the end, no T-Rex, of course, but the suspense continued and evading, and then they get right into evading the clutches of the mosasaur, which is really well done, and then beating Toro to the last of the monorails to the evacuating ferries and the pterosaurs. So the group continues to bond, even if a little broken from some of the mistrust and the presumed loss of Ben during a really well done pterosaur monorail sequence. But the end of the show really impressed me because the main characters did not make it to the last ferry as we would think they would do, and that Ben, in fact, seemed to be alive. So now I'm going to kind of conclude. I think Camp Cretaceous has a really bright future ahead of it. I definitely want to see more seasons of this. I wonder how long they're going to focus on Isla Nublar, and they could possibly explore other islands of the archipelago because we have Isla Sorna out there, we have the other five deaths out there. They could maybe explore those. Maybe we could have a season where, or part of it, where it focuses on corporate espionage, where Sammy has to go to Manticore and the kids kind of help her out, which would be kind of nice to see. And of course, because we're kind of focusing on the continuity of this franchise, I do wonder how it's going to tie into Dominion and how they can bridge between the films. And overall, this show is a strong addition to Netflix for an animated show that respects the intensity of the Jurassic films and books while also staying within the confines of a family-oriented entertainment. And all the episodes I feel were well paced. The score was nice with nods to cinematic themes. I think personally some of the sequence could be adapted to the rides in the Universal theme parks. And overall, the future of Jurassic, I think, is really thriving, and I can't wait to see what the next era of dinosaurs holds.